Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. And well, as the title of the video suggests, today we are here to discuss how social stealth could work in Assassin's Creed moving forward. And I want to draw your attention towards a very specific word right in the beginning of the video, and that is could. This is something that could happen. Will this happen? That is not very likely, to be fair, because whatever. Let's not go into that. Now, before going into how social stealth might be handled in future games, we need to first talk about how they were handled in the previous games. And social stealth has been one of those things that were huge in Assassin's Creed, but never perfect. Now, at the very first point that I have is that blending in just with the hood doesn't always make sense. Now, there was a tweet by someone, and I'm not going to name that someone here, essentially saying that, I always found that wearing hoods and moving in a crowd looks more suspicious. And that is correct. In fact, I have had this problem in Assassin's Creed for a while where you never really look like you look something that would blend into a crowd. Like, if there is any example that you need of this, look at the Brotherhood E3 trailer where Ezio is walking through a crowd of, the red robed monks. And he just stands out like a sore thumb. Now, I get that that was the point of that entire thing. Like, he wanted to stand out there and he would probably blend in elsewhere. But there are a few armors in Assassin's Creed, and in fact, there are a few games in Assassin's Creed where the blending in simply doesn't make sense. Like, what's happening on your screen doesn't quite make sense. In Assassin's Creed 1, social stealth worked because of the monks. Like, you see in the CG trailer, and even when you play the game, you're wearing that white robe, you are sort of blending in with those monks. So, in that sense, it works very well. And the next game I would say where it worked really well was Assassin's Creed 2. Yeah, now I understand what I'm saying here. But in Assassin's Creed 2, when I say Assassin's Creed 2, I mean the original robes, the Giovanni Auditore's robes. Yeah, those ones, they work great because those robes, especially, with the cape, if you wear the Venetian cape, you have immunity in Venice. Then you have one cape that grants you immunity in Firenze, so Florence. So yeah, those kind of things, those work well. And even the armor itself was not too over the top, and it sort of blended in nicely with the Renaissance era. So yeah, even though Ezio is wearing a hood, it's good. It's not standing out all that much. And considering that Ezio wasn't exactly an infamous assassin at the point, yeah, it made sense. It made lesser sense in Brotherhood. But then again, Brotherhood did a different sort of a system where it was more of a stealth in a group than stealth for the individual. Like, Ezio wasn't really trying to hide per se. It was more about the Brotherhood there because the name Brotherhood. But things sort of really start to fall apart in Revelations, then Assassin's Creed 3, then Black Flag. Social stealth never made sense in Black Flag. Like, come on, people can see you with the hood. And in fact, that one dialogue that, Governor Torres sort of wrote in the letter that, I am sure that we'll be able to recognize you with the outfit that your order has been infamous for. Like, at that point, you should consider the fact that this doesn't work. So yeah, these are some of the worst examples. So all that said, that was Assassin's Creed in the past. That's what social stealth did in the past. And one of the places where social stealth really worked well in the modern games was Assassin's Creed Unity. Was it perfect? Hell no. But it worked because of the massive crowds that were on the street. Yes, you were wearing a hood. You did look a bit suspicious. But that hood served a different purpose. It was more like the hood served the purpose of keeping your identity secret rather than, blending in with the crowd. You were already pretty much blended in with the crowd because of what you were wearing. Unless you were one of those idiots who were wearing bright red outfits with, the flashy over-the-top stuff. then I can't really speak for you. But for most people, especially the starting armor in Assassin's Creed Unity, it blends in pretty well with the crowd. So it worked well there because the sheer scale of the crowd. Now moving to what should happen. Now this is the part of the video where we discuss what should happen. And that is, the first point for that, I would say, is the Hitman system. Now, Hitman has a brilliant disguise system, especially something I would say that was done really well in the more recent games like the Hitman 1, 2 and now 3. Now, it is a very cool way to do social stealth, and there is a depth to the system. Like, just because you have a disguise doesn't mean that no one will ever notice you. Like, even if you have a disguise, there are some of the elite enemies of the same archetype. So like there is an elite guard who can recognize you, like the manager of all guards maybe, or some high profile guard who has been there for a while. They might recognize that, hey, this guy doesn't belong here. So these are the sort of things that make that system really good. And in fact, the first level of Hitman 3, which I did put out on my channel, it even has a system where just going into a crowd also blends you in. So it already is very close to becoming an Assassin's Creed game. And that is a system that I would love to see in Assassin's Creed. Now, I get that this is not the most original setup, but let's be honest, what part of Assassin's Creed really screams original anymore? Like the games that we have played in Origins, Odyssey and Valhalla, not the most unique. Let's be honest there. So, of course, this is something Ubisoft has already done with Watch Dogs Legion, because in Watch Dogs Legion, you can, have a recruit who says belongs to Albion, and they will be able to go into Albion hideouts easily in their uniform, and only a few guards will be able to see something that is off. So in a way that makes a lot of sense, and that really gives you another option to play the game. Rather than going in guns blazing or even with a silenced pistol, rather than leaving a trail of bodies in your wake, this is a good way to do it. And I will stress more on this when I go into the other points that I have in this video. So stay in the video for that. Now, if a system like this, say if this were to be integrated with Assassin's Creed, the one way I could see this working is with the disguise system that we saw in Liberation. Now, it's a damn shame that we never saw that system be in the mainline Assassin's Creed games. We saw a glimpse of it in Unity, but it was more of animus trickery than the character actually doing it. And I feel like if the character actually switches between these profiles or loadouts, where it would, make them more vulnerable to some playstyles, but, better at some other playstyles, like for example, they would be able to disguise better, then that would make a really good system. Now, how would you use the hood then? Because the hood has been an integral part of Assassin's Creed. Like, it is so immense in the iconography of Assassin's Creed that they even shoehorned it in Odyssey, because they had to, make some connection to Assassin's Creed. So now how would you use the hoods then? Now, I would say that in terms of the hoods, it would still be necessary. Like, say for example, you don't want to go slow walk your way through this setup. Say you want to get some of that stabby action. You can do that. Like, put the hood on for the low profile mode so that, you are less visible to other enemies, or even if you are visible, you are like a shadow moving in some grass or something. And then you can go and get inside the enemy camp and kill your way to your target. So in that case, the low profile actions would have the hood on, but the high profile social stealth actions will have your normal outfit on, where you are not really crouching or moving down, you are just simply walking through a camp. Now, something like Syndicate would be a perfect example of how to do it. For example, Syndicate had the system where when you crouch, you put your hood out. Now, I personally would separate those buttons. I would have something like the system from Valhalla, where you can crouch separately and have the hood and the cloak separately. That would be my go-to. But yeah, that's something that you can do. Social stealth is for more high-profile actions, and your normal crouching, the hood and other stuff is for the low-profile actions. That would work brilliantly. Now that brings me to the second part of this video, that is the gear effects in social stealth. Now, since the transition of Assassin's Creed into the RPG era, which sucks, but let's not get carried away here. The gear system has always been more geared towards combat. Now, granted that there are some systems, especially in Odyssey, where the gear is directed towards stealth. Like, I personally have a stealth build, and it does work very well in the context of the game, but honestly it doesn't really do much for the stealth per se. Like, it increases your assassination damage, it gives you the ability to go for the critical hit that will one shot your enemies, and also it reduces the health and stuff. Like, all that is fine, like, but the thing that I want more than anything is, like, affecting the detection range or the detection speed or the noise you are making, things like that. Like, Unity had that. Like, in Unity, a bulky gear won't be good for stealth, as guards will be able to see and hear you from a distance. Now, I don't know about the hear part, but they can definitely see you from a greater distance. Lighter armor has better effect on stealth, at least they have those stats. Now, did they always work? No, they didn't. But they had it. The system was there. It was just not very well implemented. Now, as for how the gear would affect social stealth, let's take Odyssey as an example, and you will get why I'm taking that example in a second. Now, let's say you are wearing a Spartan armor set. The red, the gear with the Spartan gear. You're wearing that. Now, you should ideally be able to walk right into a Spartan camp. Because for the normal guards, you just look like a Spartan soldier. And this is the point that I was talking about in my previous point. This is like the extension of that point. And in fact, there is an extension still after this one as well. So say that you are walking into that fort. So now the normal guards, they will just think, he or she is just a guard. So yeah, sure, let them in. But there will be elite NPCs like, the big commander guards and the captains of the camp. They might be able to recognize that, hey, I don't employ this person. So who is this? And they might become suspicious. And this would work well. So for example, you wear that same Spartan armor set and you go into an Athenian camp. Now, if you walk in straight into an Athenian camp, obviously the Athenians would want to immediately remove you from their premises or even kill you on sight, depending on what the situation demands for. There would also be another interaction, but that would go into my third point, and that's coming straight for it. Now, this is an effect that would even work for the color of the gears. Now, for Assassin's Creed, since Origins, Odyssey, and now Valhalla, color of the gear hasn't really been a thing because it's always been preset gear with preset colors. Now, there's a bug in Valhalla right now where you can change the color of the armor a little bit based on all the merchant boots and stuff, but honestly, doesn't even matter. Now, the point I'm trying to make is, say you are wearing a red armor, like hints of red, and it looks somewhat Spartan, then even though you might not be, looking like a guard, the guards might still let you in. Like, some of the guards won't bother you because they think that you are allied to them. But the hierarchy of guards would be such that a few other guards might notice you and might feel like something is off. Like I said, like when you're wearing the Spartan armor, it could be the case that when you go into the camp, only the elite NPCs would detect you. But when you're wearing just the colors, maybe even some lesser NPCs might be more aware of your presence. So that is something that works well. And if the armor is colored blue, the Athenians might just assume the same. And as I said, this carries over directly to the next point that I'm about to make. And that is the dialogue in social stealth. Speechcraft is an important part of an RPG. It is an important part of any RPG. It could be an alternative to the stabbing action, provided that the interactions are written properly and not overly repetitive, like we suppose had in Skyrim, like you are in violation of law and all that stuff. I don't remember the exact dialogue, but you get my point. Now, a system like that could benefit these games immensely. Say, for example, in the previous example, one of the elite guard now spots you and asks you to stop. Now, you can run away and or initiate combat, or simply just run away and hide somewhere, or simply kill him quickly and then go hide somewhere for the more traditional stabby stuff. Or you could have a conversation with the elite guard and try to convince him that you are in fact a guard. Now, whether or not you will succeed will depend on how good your speechcraft is, like how good your skill is. If you are skilled enough, then you may be able to convince that guard to let you go. Now, this could have different effects. Like, for example, if you are really charismatic and you have really high speech skills, the guard will just assume that you are a guard and just let you go. If you don't have that much capability, if you have a lower speech skill, you may be able to talk your way out in the way that, they will just throw you out of the camp and not kill you or not initiate combat. And you can just try again. Also, they will have a higher detection thing. Like, so they will have more awareness now. Things like that. But it would help, and it would depend on how much speech skill you have. Now, I'm not saying that this needs to have a Bard college, like don't go into Bard's college and get a degree or something. I'm not saying that. And I'm not even saying that games need to have flyting for this. You could gain more speech by simply talking to people and doing things like maybe haggling with the merchants or solving problems via conversations instead of, the stabby stuff. Why not have a system where you can kill assassination targets without so much as touching a single guard and making your way by simply using words? A pen is mightier than a sword after all, so why not? Now, of course, the next point that I want to talk about is the skills and abilities in social stealth. Now, we saw the skill tree in Odyssey, we saw the skill tree in Valhalla. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of either of these. In fact, I pretty much dislike them because they might look deep when you first see them, like they might look expansive, but the more you actually look at these skill trees, the more you realize that there is no choice whatsoever. Like if you need to go in Valhalla, especially if you need to get to power level 400, you need to have a skill point in every single branch. You need to have every single skill, every single node. So it doesn't make any sense that you are aiming for a high power level like that, because what is even the point of that? Now that said though, Skyrim-esque skill tree with special branches for speech and social stealth would be a nice touch. Like for example, some of the skills could be how well you can haggle, or how you can get away from a guard. Maybe your speech level will determine just how many skill points you can investigate, like exactly like Skyrim does. Like Skyrim doesn't just have a leveling system. The way it works is the more you use your skills, the higher amount of leveling you get inside that skill tree, and then your abilities are unlocked the more you use those skills. So in that way, that's a really organic way to do it. And in fact, I'm a huge fan of the way the Skyrim game handles its skills. And I feel like any decent RPG should at least have a similar-ish system. Like, yes, have your own spin on it, but like, this is something that you can use. If you want to make a good RPG, this is a really good skill system. Now, if you want to play as a warrior who kills 50 people alone, he just goes into a camp, kills 50 people in combat, that is fine. You can always invest in one-handed weapons, two-handed weapons, armors, battle skills, everything like that. But in case you want to play that more social stealth thing, or if you want to play as more of a stealth player, you have this option as well. So it's really giving the player more option. Like Ubisoft loves to talk about player agency, like we are giving gender options and all that shit because, we want, more options for the players instead of having a single protagonist because they are too chicken to actually have a female protagonist. But if you really want to give people a choice, then give them the choice, because this would be a really good choice. It would be a different way to play the game. And having these things like social stealth would return the lost identity of Assassin's Creed. Like right now, you may argue that the games are good. You may argue that the games are bad. But the one thing that you cannot argue, that this is a huge step away from the Assassin's Creed franchise that used to exist before. Like if you pick up and play Odyssey, if you are not specifically told that this is an Assassin's Creed game, you might not even realize for the most part that you're playing an Assassin's Creed story or playing an Assassin's Creed game in general. Like, unless otherwise you reach some of the ending parts where, there's specifically name Isu and the other stuff in the game, you may not even realize that you're playing an Assassin's Creed game. That's how far Assassin's Creed has gone from its identity. Now, having things like these would return some of that identity while still evolving the franchise. Because I'm not saying that the games should not be an RPG. I'm saying that the game should do a better job at being an RPG. Because the last 3 games that I have played are simply not good RPGs. Odyssey was still passable as an RPG. Valhalla completely falls flat as an RPG. And Valhalla is also not a good action adventure game. And that is something that actually, made me think about all of this. Now, I know this is a long video considering the fact that I'm simply rambling on for 20 minutes odd, for a topic that honestly, let's be honest, is not even going to have an effect, because who the fuck even cares in Ubisoft anymore? Like, yes, there are people from the original team, but I highly doubt anyone is working towards systems like these. They are more, concerned about just putting out a generic ass game with a huge open world so that people can spend more time in a mind-lovingly boring game, because this is something that people do. Like, if people are more, how do I put it, if people are more used to something, they will go back to it. For example, I always go back to NFS Most Wanted because that's a game I've been playing since I was a little kid. I always have that in my hard drive, and if I don't feel like playing anything else, I always have NFS Most Wanted. So it's things like that, really. So people have that. Sometimes people do develop these sort of bonds with these games, and even though the games themselves aren't particularly good, it's just that they have so much content that people have something to do. So that's really their selling point now, and I honestly don't feel like this video is going to achieve anything. But if anything, it's just getting some ideas off my head. So there's that. But all that said though, if you did like this video, then consider pressing that like button, and also do subscribe to my channel. I recently hit 104 subscribers. I am looking to, grow my channel even further. And there are a lot of other content on my channel, a lot of other games. So check out my channel. If you do like it, consider subscribing, because that will make me happy. And well, I will leave you guys in peace.